You're listening to Crosstalk, Conversations with Kurtis. Crosstalk, Conversations with Kurtis is brought to you by...
You know, there are few relationships more solid than the bond between a man and his barber. For years, I've gotten my cut with Gene the Barber. Gene has been cutting my hair for more than 20 years. Call him directly at 240-687-7253 and make an appointment. Gene the Barber, 240-687-7253.
A Squared Home and Office Solutions is the go-to source for home or office network and audiovisual solutions. We can help with smart home integration, wireless networking, media rooms, security systems, and more. We will link technology to your lifestyle seamlessly. Visit homeandofficesolutions.com for more info.
You're listening to Crosstalk, Conversations with Kurtis. Here's your host, Kurtis Cross.
Welcome to Crosstalk Conversations with Kurtis. I am your host, Kurtis Cross. Thanks for joining the conversation today as I welcome you to the table. Be sure to connect with the conversation on Instagram and Twitter at Kurtis Talks. And of course, you can visit kurtistalks.com to join the conversation online. Thanks to our sponsors, Gene the Barber and A Squared Home and Office Solutions. You can also connect socially at Kurtis Talks on Instagram and Twitter. On Facebook, just search Kurtis Cross. I invite you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search Kurtis and Paula. That is Kurtis with a K. I invite you to listen and support the other podcasts in our catalog. Those podcasts would be Crosstalk, The Kurtis and Paula Show. This is a weekly podcast with me and Paula as your hosts, where we discuss life, love, marriage, parenthood, and the daily happenings in our life. Take a Tea with Turner and O'Neill, a local and national sports podcast where we have guests from the NBA, NFL, the PLL, and across the world of professional college and local sports. 911 Radio, you'll hear from first responders, firefighters, police officers, and correction officers. This is where you will hear real stories from real heroes. The Midnight Truck Stop, hosted by Big T and the Blue Knight. This is where you'll hear strange and unexplained incidents that so many have experienced while traveling along desolate highways. All of these podcasts can be heard on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Buzzsprout, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and just about anywhere you get your podcast content. Once again, thanks for listening and welcome to the table. This is Crosstalk Conversations with Kurtis. Today, I'm excited to welcome to this episode this guest to this conversation. Mr. Announcer Guy is how much of the world may know him, but I met him as Brian Sweeney. Brian is someone I can call a friend, but the funny thing is I've known him for less than a year now. Brian and I met in Cool Springs, Tennessee, as we were both groomsmen in a wedding for our very good friend, the main event voice, Mr. Sean William Parker. Over that weekend, Brian and I, his wife and Paula and I, his wife is Alana. We had some good times together. We sat together, we ate together, we fellowshiped together, and all of that. We tried to do justice to our roles as groomsmen. Besides being a friend, Brian is a fascinating fellow. While he does hold a full-time job, Brian lends his voice to any number of sporting events in the Minnesota area as a play-by-play guy, an in-arena announcer, and a host of other media duties that I am not going to do justice to. So before I go any further, let's welcome Mr. Announcer Guy, Mr. Brian Sweeney.
That was quite the buildup. I'm not used to that.
Brian, did you pay for the applause? You paid extra for that, didn't you? My
wife's kids are hiding behind the curtain here.
That's what it is. Well, I'm just going to tell you, I don't know if I gave you the wrong Cash App, but I didn't get the money. So if you want to pay for your appearance here, that's, whenever you're ready,
Hey, I'll give you every dollar that's in my wallet right now.
Okay. How much is that, Brian?
We have $6.
All right, it's a deal. Let's go. Brian, I'm going to ask you to do justice to what it is you do behind the mic. Talk to the people for me, Brian.
Oh, wow. Well, let's start at the high school level. High school, for years, I've done boys and girls soccer, boys football, boys and girls lacrosse, boys and girls hockey, girls dance. I've dabbled in volleyball, baseball, basketball, and wrestling. I think that pretty much sums up most of the high school sports. Currently, the only thing I have left that I do in high school right now is high school football. College has kind of taken over the rest of my time. it's from all those sports. At the college level right now, we do Division II football, Division II soccer, Division II women's lacrosse. We fill in for Division II volleyball. The Division III level, I've done men's and women's hockey, women's soccer and volleyball. The Division I level, I've done both men's and women's hockey, men's baseball, and women's volleyball. And on the semi-pro level, I've done watercross and I've done women's tackle football.
Is that it, Brian?
That's just the public address announcing part of it. I had to catch my breath before we could get into the color commentary and the play-by-play.
Brian, I will tell you, there's a bad echo. There's a bad echo when I'm talking. Can we fix that at all, you think?
Turn you down a little bit.
Turn me down, Brian, please.
That make any difference?
That makes a good bit of difference. Let's talk teams, though, Brian. How many teams are you covering right now? In 1 year, a full year of sports, how many teams can we find Mr. Announcer Guy covering?
Currently, let's see, there'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on a full-time basis, and another 1, 2, 3, 5 on a part-time or fill-in basis.
So you might be a little bit busy.
A little bit, most of the time.
My man, now one of the first things I remember discussing with you down in Cool Springs is the spreadsheet. Please, I need you to describe or rather bring to life the spreadsheet so our audience can grasp that concept, because this is where you and I are we're like one and the same here. So tell the people about this, please.
So I started a spreadsheet a few years back only to keep track of what I had announced, where I had announced, whether it was public address, broadcast media, tryouts, high school, college, semi-pro, and then then I also have it broken down by gender, so I can say what percentage has been men's sports, what percentage is women's, what percentage is neutral, because I do parade coverage for the city on their local television station. Obviously a parade is for everybody, so it's not a men's or a women's sport. It's a parade. So the spreadsheet's broken down by color as far as, yellow is college, blue is high school, red is semi-pro, and then, it's got the different columns breaking everything down. So I can, at any one time, I can look and say, yeah, I've done this many volleyball matches or this many football games, or this was my largest attended crowd at an event, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
So it's color-coded, it's sports-specific.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have what you wear on there as well, Brian?
Not on that, but I have a different spreadsheet for my for one of my web series shows that I've done this year, that I keep track of what I've worn each episode, so that I make sure it's something different each week. And
we're going to get to that web series soon. We're going to talk about that as well. But how many events would you say is a good year for Mr. Announcer Guy?
My record year was 168, roughly.
Brian, there are 365 days in a year, Brian.
I know. I got to pick up the pace.
You have 197 more you can do. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
You figure at the high school level, they never play on Sundays.
Well, Brian, those sound like excuses to me. Sounds like excuses to me. But so 168 events is where you tapped out in 1 year. So that means on average, that's once less than every 3 days you're out there doing another event.
Correct.
How many have you covered in 1 day?
My record for 1 day is 4, and this isn't an excuse, because I know there's a lot of announcers out there that will go to a tournament and they'll do a whole bunch of back-to-back events. Right. But my events are all full length. So it's a regulation football game or a regulation hockey game. It's not a whole bunch of little 3 versus 3 20-minute games. I mean, we're talking full length events that it was for. So
well, you definitely got me beat. I've done 3 in 1 day, but you've done You've done 4 in one day. So I want to talk a bit about, let's get right into it, the Road to Canton. This is a project that you are rightfully proud of. So share this project with us, please. And keep in mind, when we podcast here, obviously you and I talk on what I would call a somewhat regular basis. I have some of the background, but our audience that's listening and watching, they might not have any background. So start me from step 1. Talk about the Road to Canton, please.
So back in 2018, I was fortunate enough to be brought on board with the Women's Football Alliance, or the WFA, to do the broadcast play-by-play coverage of their national championship game.
Right.
Obviously, I did well enough that I was asked to come back in 2019. And then as we were getting ready for 2020, COVID hit, and we all know what happened there with the sports world. As we were getting ready for the 2021 season, it was announced that the national championships, which in the past had traveled from state to state, 2018, it was in Atlanta, Georgia when I did it. 2019, it was in Golden, Colorado.
And you traveled to those places, right?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So for 2021, they signed an agreement with the Hall of Fame Village in Canton, Ohio, to have a certain number of years where the women's national championship for tackle football was going to be held in Canton at the Hall of Fame. We decided that it would be great to have a weekly show. Basically highlight the teams that were going to be the game of the week, so to speak, much like your Monday Night Football or your Fox NFL Sunday or what have you. So every week I sit down with players and coaches across the United States. I interview them about why they play football, what got them into it, how being a part of the team has benefited them emotionally from the family aspect of that. And we broadcast this out. We have a player of the week that we've highlighted from the weeks before as far as what their statistical numbers are and things of that nature. It drops Thursdays of game week, so there won't be one. The next one would come out on the 22nd of July. That can be found both on my Twitter page and on the For the Fans HQ Twitter page as well. It can also be found on numerous sites on Facebook. We're pretty excited. The show that dropped this past Thursday in its weekend of coverage is just under 5,000 views already. It's already our highest watched episode of the season. We've had 8 episodes, and we're excited. We've reached well over 70,000 people through this so far. We've had over 100,000 impressions across social media where they've clicked on it, clicked on WFA, clicked on For the Fans, things like that to get more information. And the players around the league and the coaching staffs have really liked the legitimacy that it's bringing to the league. It's allowing people that don't necessarily know that women's tackle football exists. It's allowing them to get a taste of it, to see some footage, to find out where the games can be watched, things of that nature. So we're really excited for it, and we can't wait to bring it back next season again.
Well, here's the thing. Women's professional tackle football is not as popular as you or I would want it to be, but for the league to sanction or to put energy, time, and money into the Road to Canton means they believe in what's on the field, and they believe in marketing it so that we can get this exposure out so people can know about it. I'm a DC Divas fan. I always have been. I've been to DC Divas games. There was a time where the Divas, they ran women's professional football, as you probably know. I don't know if you win the games then, but certainly you're a guy who would know the history behind the game. And now it seems like that balance of power has shifted to Minnesota or shifted to Boston because the Renegades are doing well. And however, you've got, we didn't jump the gun yet, but I'm ready to talk about it. Let's talk Vixen a bit more. Real hits, real women, real football. For those who do not know about women's professional football, paint that picture for me.
Yeah, you mentioned the Minnesota Vixen. The Minnesota Vixen is the longest continuously running women's tackle football team in the United States.
I'm going to stop you for a second. When did the Vixen start? Give me that number.
1999.
Do you have any players on the current roster who were there when you guys started in 1999?
Yes.
I cannot believe that. I heard that, in another interview you did, because I wasn't the first one you did, because you didn't have time for me before now, clearly. Clearly, I was begging you. I was knocking on your door, but
I'm
no.
squeezing you in right now.
Right now, it's almost dinner time. I know. He's an hour behind, guys, so he's going to have dinner once he's done here. But you have, is just one player or multiple players?
We have 2 players that are still on the active roster and 2 coaches that were on the original team.
From the beginning?
From the beginning.
We're talking 22 years ago.
Yes.
I can do math. I can do math. But tell me, for those who don't know, like I said, paint that picture. Talk to me about what will draw someone to the WFA or Minnesota Vixens football in general. Why this sport? Tell me why I should watch. I already do, but tell our fans, our audience, why they should watch.
Sure. As everybody knows, football is an amazing sport. It requires strength. It requires endurance. It requires athleticism. And it requires a strong head on your shoulder. You're not just out there chasing a ball around. The X's and O's, the plays that are drawn up, you sprint down the field for 10 yards and then you dart straight to your left for 5 yards. And that's where the ball is going to be. So you need to make sure you're there when the quarterback puts the ball there. You've got women out there that have day jobs as police officers, lawyers, teachers, construction laborers, the list goes on, and they get together for a couple practices a week, and then they get together on game day, and they are out there giving everything they can, not only for their sisters that are on the team with them, but they're showing the next generation up in the stands that this sport was not meant just for men to play.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you were so thorough with that, but I'm glad you skipped the part that I want to ask you about specifically. This is not the NFL. This is not the NBA. This is not even Division I college or the NHL or MLB, where there are huge sponsors. Talk to me about these players and what their other commitment is, that commitment that they actually have to give themselves, because they're not sponsored by PayPal and, 100 helmets are getting delivered and 100 shoulder pads. And, they're not sponsored by Virgin Atlantic where they're getting flights across the country. Talk to me about that piece, because you really got to want to play.
Yeah, you're 100% correct with that statement. This is unfortunately a pay-to-play league. I've often told people when they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, have you ever been in a bowling league or anything like that? You show up, you're paying to bowl. You're getting rewards out of it. You're getting, the thrill out of it and stuff like that. But you're paying to do this. Many of these women, they have the opportunity to get their own sponsorships. My wife and I do everything we can to give our business to the people that sponsor both the team and the players on the team. My son and I just recently got tattoos at a tattoo place that sponsors one of our players, because it's like, you're gonna put your faith in a player that's playing for the Minnesota Vixen. You're the kind of business that I want to do business with. The women have to come up with players' fees. They have to buy their own equipment. You mentioned the fact that they're not getting delivered the helmets. Granted, they have great sponsors like Zenith that give them discounted equipment, but it's still not free. Like an NFL player would walk into their combine and they'd be given a giant duffel bag of just about everything they would ever need. The Minnesota Vixen this year had a great deal with Oakley, where Oakley was giving discounted merchandise to the players to help them. That way, if they needed a visor for their helmet to keep the sun out of their eyes, they would not have to pay full price for that. But then again, they're paying for travel. We've got Canton, Ohio coming up here on the 24th for the Minnesota Vixen for the national championship against the Boston Renegades that you mentioned earlier. They have to get there. And being that it's I don't know if you've ever flown into Ohio, but it's not a hub city. It's not in Atlanta or a Denver or a Minneapolis or New York or a Reagan Airport in DC. It's not one that has 5,000 flights going into it a day. This is a smaller airport, so obviously the costs are going to be a little bit more to get to that airport. And during the season, they have multiple road games as well, so they're traveling to those. This year the Vixen had a game in Des Moines, Iowa, which from Minnesota was, not a huge deal, but they also had a game in Arlington, Texas. So they had to travel down to Texas. So you start putting multiple travel times into a season on top of everything else. And if you're a person that works the kind of job where your job is on the weekends, now you're putting in for time off as well. So not only are you paying to play, but you might be losing income by taking that time off of work.
Well, tell me this. So when you say Arlington, Texas, does that mean each player, you take the cost of a couple of charter buses, divide it by 53 players and you go, or they're getting there on their own?
For a smaller trip in the past pre-COVID, there would have been a bus. Bus would take them to Detroit years ago. Bus would take them to Chicago years ago, things like that. But with COVID, that kind of changed everything. The team didn't really want to put everybody on a bus and ship them all together. So they were all on their own getting to all the away games this year.
Wow. So this is not just, the Renegades, the Vixen, the DC Divas, all of these teams. We have multiple divisions. Talk to me about these divisions and why we have these divisions and the makeup of these divisions.
Sure. There's 3 divisions in the WFA. For ease, they're labeled Division 1, 2, and 3. Division 3 is typically your teams that are newer to the league, just starting out, don't have that business plan in place yet, can't get a large enough roster to have separate players on both sides of the ball.
And that's the major breakdown, is the roster size, right?
Roster size is very much a part of it. A lot of the younger teams, they might have a player that's playing offense, defense, and special teams. Whereas a team like the Minnesota Vixen, the DC Divas, Cali War, Tampa Bay Inferno, things like that, they're able to roster, enough players that, okay, you're on this team as a wide receiver. That's all you play.
That's it.
And some of the teams like the Minnesota Vixen even have enough players that they have multiple running backs. So you have a running back whose job it is to get you those larger increments of yardage. And then when you just need to bust through like the first and goal type thing, you have the running back that you can put in there that's her job, is just to get you that touchdown at the end of the run. So
with some of these players, Brian, everyone knows I'm a DJ. I've done some weddings for, actually, did you recall games when Becky Worsham was playing?
Not familiar with that name.
She was one of the DC Divas. I did her wedding, and for those of you who don't know, let's throw out the window that, they're not playing real tackle football. Oh, it's a girl sport. Let's throw all that out the window. I dare anyone listening to meet Becky Worsham in a dark alley somewhere. We're talking 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". We often don't mention weights of women in professional sports, but there's some heavy hitters. You got some heavy hitters out there in Minnesota. Am I correct?
Oh yeah, I mean we go to the after parties, when we're on the road, and my wife and I've never.
It's not that kind of podcast, Brian. It's not that kind of podcast. No, please continue.
I've never once been afraid, no matter what neighborhood I'm in, because I know that everybody on that team has my back.
Right. So it's broken down by division. The Vixen are in what would be known as the larger or more skilled of the divisions. Would that be correct?
Correct.
How large is that roster?
The Vixen, I think the roster itself is 66, okay, but they can only dress like 50 or 53. It's based on NCAA rules.
Right. Okay. All right. So they just 53. And I think you have a couple players out there in Minnesota who I think there's one young lady, she's just short of hitting a milestone with yardage. Is that correct?
Yeah, Grace Cooper this year, she is 4 yards short of 1,400 yards rushing on the season.
And we're not talking about a 16-game season, right?
No, we are 8-0 this season. So that's 8 games, 6 regular season, and 2 playoffs so far.
So 1,400 that she's coming up on is based on the 10 games plus what she's going to do in Canton in a couple of weeks, right?
8 games plus what she's going to do in Canton.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the regular season was 6, or?
This year it was only 6.
Okay. What's the regular season look like, non-pandemic?
Non-pandemic would be 8 regular season games. You'd have 2 bye weeks in there, and then you'd have 2 playoff rounds, and then the national championship.
Okay. So, is there a bye for the top team, or everyone's playing playoff week 1?
Normally everybody's playing playoff week 1. This year, because of COVID and not every team was able to field a team, There were some cities across the United States where they couldn't have tryouts, couldn't have practices, things like that, with the rules constantly changing. So Division I this year only had 7 teams.
Okay.
Next year, Division I is probably going to be around 12 teams.
All right. So we're talking about a full schedule. We're talking about some more talent coming into Division I and all that good stuff. Why do you do it, Brian? Why? Why are you behind the mic for the Vixen? What makes you want to show up to each game and travel when you travel and all that? What is Brian? I mean, I don't, it doesn't matter to me if there's a payday in or not, but there's something besides a payday that does it for you. What does it for you?
So true story. Originally, when I started, I had never met the owners before. And I went to one of their games. This was in 2014. And I was introduced to the owners, and I was listening to the person that was doing the public address announcing for them at the time.
Uh-oh.
And I pointed up to the stands or to the booth there, and I told them I could do better.
Right.
At that time, I had done 1 season of high school hockey, and that was it. Okay. So I had less than 50 events under my belt at that time. But listening to that person, I knew I could do better.
Who shall remain nameless?
I don't even know their name, so they're going to remain nameless because I don't know who they were.
Right.
And the owners called my bluff, and that was the start of the season of 2015, and here we are, the season of 2021. 7 years with the team, 6 of actually calling games because of COVID, and it's led to more things for me. So, I mean, you asked what's in it for me. For me, it's looking for that next break. I mean, you mentioned Sean Parker. If I hadn't made that, remark at a Vixen game back in 2014, I would have never met Sean Parker, because the odds are I would have never auditioned for the Minnesota Timberwolves, which is how I met Sean Parker, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I wouldn't know you if I didn't have a smart ass remark.
Well, you know what? It's worth it. It's worth it. Every smart ass remark you will ever make, this one is the crown jewel. You're not going to beat this one, just so you know. You can be a smart ass the rest of your life. You're not going to top this one. What has the experience been like with the Divas?
With who?
I'm sorry, with the Vixen. I said Divas. What has it been like with the Vixen?
For a moment there, I thought you said I was a diva.
Well, you are that.
My experience with the Minnesota Vixen has been phenomenal. We've made some amazing friends. The owners are 2 of my wife and mine's best friends. You can see behind me on the wall there's a picture of my wife and I. That was given to us on our wedding day, and it's signed by every player that was on the team that year as a wedding gift. I mean, it's allowed me to, being a part of the Minnesota Vixen, has allowed me to go do other things that I don't think I would have done if I hadn't been a part of the team. I mean, granted, I could have still gone to the city of Chicago, but to get to go there and work for the team, it is something special. I mean, to get to go to, Arlington and work for the team, to get to go to Atlanta, Georgia and work for the team. I mean, it's different. I mean, and there's not the payday, so as you spoke about,
right.
But there's things about being a part of the team that to me are worth more than the paper money, which is the $6 that is now yours that was in my wallet.
Just saying.
I mean, getting to do the Vixen has opened up a lot of other opportunities for me. The WFA, and like I said, in 2018, asked me to become their play-by-play person for the Division I National Championship game.
By the way, talk about your partner. You have an on-air partner, right? That I think someone I know, right?
Yes, Donna Wilkinson, who happened to have played for the DC Divas.
And I know her through that and some of the events that I've hosted here in the DC, Maryland area. But Donna and I are I would say we're acquaintances. We're certainly Facebook friends, and we've been in the same circles for event purposes over the years. But I think you and her have done more than a time or two, right?
Yeah, we've spent a number of hours together in a small broadcast room, staring out a window onto a field and talking to each other through headsets. But during weather delays and stuff, and especially in Golden, Colorado, we had about a 2.5, 3 hour weather delay because of lightning and stuff in the area. And I mean, it gave me a chance to really sit and talk with Donna and find out who she is. And Donna is an amazing person. I mean, there's a lot of things that, in listening to what she's had to say, I've kind of explored things on my own as far as some holistic medicines, and as far as, just how I can make myself a better person for those around me.
Right. But don't forget, it all started with one smart ass remark, right?
One smart ass remark.
Ryan, let's rewind. For a period of a year or more, the business went dormant. With the pandemic, just about all sports took a pause. That meant guys like you and I were not working games. Take me through that for you. Your spreadsheet went kaput, right? There was nothing to put on the spreadsheet. Talk to me about what that was like for you.
Yeah, so I mean, this was in March of 2020. On a Sunday afternoon, I was doing the public address announcing for a Minnesota Golden Gophers men's hockey game. It was the rubber game in the first round of the Big Ten playoffs, and the Gophers won that. They were getting ready to go to Penn State to play the second round, and we got home that Wednesday night was when the NBA decided to cancel the game after the public address announcer at that game had already done lineups and such. And the next thing I know, I'm starting to get emails, and it's like, what's going on here? And that second week in April was when the Vixen season was supposed to start. They decided, okay, let's push this off to May and see what happens. We're getting through the end of April. We're getting close to May. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, we're not going to have a season. I had done one, the same week of the Gopher men's hockey game, I had done a Concordia St. Paul women's lacrosse game. And the next thing I know, their season gets canceled. And it was like, what am I going to do with all this time that I all of a sudden have?
You're gonna meet Kurtis Cross in Cool Springs, Tennessee. That's what you're gonna do.
Well, prior to that, I started painting the house. I mean, started painting all the trim, changing out all the doors. A
lot of us became handy.
Yes. Instead of making money, I found a good way to spend money.
Okay.
So fall rolls around and high school football season's getting ready to start. And they're like, okay, we're gonna have games. It's gonna be It's pretty much gonna be just parents in the stands to watch the games. So they still wanted me there, which was nice. So it gave me something to do in September and October. The Gopher men's hockey season started up, and I did a game in November in front of 1,000 people. Because that was what our state would allow at that time.
Right. Okay.
And literally the day after that was when the state all of a sudden was like, okay, now there's 0 people. So I did another 4 or 5 Gopher men's hockey games that winter where there was not a single fan in attendance.
I think I watched some of those, right?
Yes, you watched some live intros and some of those games on TV. Yep.
And so I got a call from Division I American University here. And I'll tell you what my experience was like. I don't know how much of your experience was like this, but they contacted me and they said, hey, we're going to do games. There are going to be no fans. This is the way it's going to work. Everyone has to be COVID tested. Everyone has to do, a morning of, you have to fill out a sheet and, all of those things. There's going to be 2 teams. They're going to be on the opposite side. So they didn't put them on the near side, sideline as they normally do. The teams will be on the opposite side. It's going to be you. And it's going to be maybe like 6 other folks. There's going to be a scorebook person, a scoreboard person. There's going to be the ESPN person who tells you when to come back from timeout, all of that. And it, for me, was not as odd. I did both men's and women's basketball this past season for American University. It was not odd for me doing it with no fans. I think, I don't know if it's this way for you, but you go into your headspace, you announce what you announce, you give the same energy. There's just not, 3,800 people in the stands who are screaming when someone dunks the basketball or makes a big shot or there's a foul and an and one. How was that for you with no fans?
With no fans, I mean, like you said, we still go into it whether there's 0 fans in attendance or, I mean, my Minnesota Gophers, the largest crowd I've had has been about 8,600.
And we've done some games with very few fans, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've done some games where there's nobody there. I mean,
Right.
pretty much prior to COVID.
You're saying if
And
me and Paula and the kids and Sean and Alana show up, that's bigger than some crowds you've had.
for some sports, yeah, sadly.
Right, okay. So you're saying you go into your zone regardless. You know what you're going to do, fans or no fans.
Yep, you go into your zone, fans or no fans. But I mean, you give it 100%. You know, I'm not one of those that says give it 110%, because let's be honest, if you ask for 110%, you can't get 110%.
There you go.
Because if you're saying that was 110%, that means you never gave 100% before.
Right.
So you give it 100%, and you do your best. But I mean, as you would say, and as Sean would know as well, there is a certain, you feed off of that feedback that you can get from the fans.
Right.
So, one thing that Gopher men's hockey does is before the 1 minute remaining is the student section literally yells out at the top of their lungs, "Hey, Brian, how much time is left?"
Right.
And
Okay.
say 1 minute remaining in the period. And then the fans say, "Thank you." And then you actually open up your mic again and say, "You're welcome." Something that, so I mean, you miss those little aspects of it. During introductions of the players, you miss the fans' feedback when you're introducing the team, because you give that big introduction of a specific player, and the fan gets all excited and they're yelling and hooting and hollering nicknames and things like that. So those parts of it are missing, and you really want those parts of it back. But the other part of it is that you give it everything you've got. You're a professional. You're there, whether it's a million fans or no fans.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm guessing you didn't say it, but I'm guessing you think like me in this respect. There's a kid whose name you can announce who will get into the game, who may score a goal, may get an assist, who this might be the end of the line for them with high-level sports. They deserve that intro. They deserve to get that fanfare. They deserve to get, goals scored by number 13, Nicholas Thomas, blah, blah, whatever time is on the big board, all of that. They deserve that. And they didn't do anything to lose what they deserve in that big-time experience from a professional announcer. Now, you and I can have a whole nother podcast about announcers and the climate around announcers who don't give 2 cents about what they're doing, and they just go in there for whatever money they're going to get out of that gig. But you, Sean, myself, others I know in the industry who, and I'm not patting us on the back, but who are professionals who have lineup cards, everything is done phonetically, who check websites, who talk to SIDs and do all of this work. We are there because we want to give, whether you're doing the Minnesota Timberwolves, whether you're doing I'm losing it. Give me the hockey team.
The Wild.
Right, the Minnesota Wild. Whether you're doing, whoever you're doing, you're going to give it your all. And it could be a JV water polo match. You're going to give it your all. And those kids deserve that. Those players deserve Mr. Announcer Guy and how you do it, right?
Oh, exactly. I mean, and especially down at the high school level, where what percentage of high school kids make it to the college level, and what percentage of those even make it to the pro level is so small. So if you can give that high schooler that yell, that introduction, to make them feel like they really are contributing to that team. I mean, that's something I've always prided myself in. And in fact, we had a hockey player this past a season ago, whose father passed away this spring, and was it spring of 20? The exact timeline escapes me right now, but one of the things I did for him on his final birthday is I recorded a video of me calling his son scoring a goal. He was going through pancreatic cancer. He was in the final stages there where there's not a lot of response. And when I sent that, and his wife texted me back afterwards, and it was one of those things where, she had been playing birthday messages for him all day long. And, there wasn't a lot of response from him. And when he got that message of me calling his son's goal, and stuff, she said he smiled. He acknowledged it. He recognized it. And, that made me feel really good right there.
Did you just make this a feel-good episode? You just turned that corner and made this a feel-good episode. I'm not going to cry. You're not going to make me cry, Brian. Don't even try.
Well, I got more stories. I could try harder.
Look, there's going to be someone listening or watching this episode who wants to be an announcer, a play-by-play guy, a color commentary young lady. What can Brian Sweeney, Mr. Announcer Guy, tell that listener or viewer to help them along? What would you want yourself to know 10 years ago or 15 years ago that would help you along in this business?
I wish I would have been in this business 10, 15 years ago. I mean, I got a late start in this. I mean, it is something that I completely fell in love with once I started doing it. And I wish I would have known 10, 15 years ago. The biggest things to do is when you go to a game, I mean, even though I've done, 700 things now, it's like I go to a game, I listen to the announcer. I listen, how are they saying it? What are they saying? I mean, for the most part, we know why they're saying it. I mean, if they score a goal, they're telling you there was a goal scored, so, but I mean, if it's something that you really want to get into, and if it's a lot easier if you have children, because you can approach the middle school, the high school, and you can say, hey, I'd like to volunteer my time and announce my kids' games for you if you have any interest in that, because so many schools have a varsity level announcer, but they don't have a JV announcer and they don't have a C squad announcer. And the main reason that they don't have those levels is for financial reasons. The money set aside for the varsity programs, at so many levels. So, if you want to dip your toes into the water, so to speak, reach out to the athletic director at the school. Say, hey, can I announce a JV game? Can I announce a C squad game? A lot of times they'll take you up on it. And I mean, you can hone your craft. I mean, as you know, a lot of times when you're announcing, you're playing the music as well. And I remember my first season, I played every song off my cell phone. The next year I had a couple of Android tablets, and a few years after that, I was running an announcing music software program on a touch screen. So, I mean, it grows with you, it grows on you, and it grows in you.
Look, you said to write the athletic director. I want to make sure I vouch for that. I don't know you if Sean Parker doesn't write to the AD at the high school where I was coaching women's varsity basketball and said, I don't want to get paid. I just want to come out and hone my craft. And the AD passes it along to me very, how do I say it, with a lot less energy than I would have wanted to see my AD pass that along. I'm like, I don't know. Let's bring the guy in. Let's see who he is. And that's when I met Sean Parker. And that was not even 10 years ago. That was 12 years. No, that was 2012. So 9 years ago, I met him. We sat in my office. We talked. We became friends. He did games, didn't want any money for it, went through his own expense to get there and do all of that. And that worked out very well. And, again, I don't know you if he doesn't write that email, So I agree 100% with what you're saying. Do it for free. If you love it, do it for free. If you end up hating it, well, it wouldn't be the job for you, because I wouldn't want anyone behind the mic specifically for the paycheck, because we're not getting rich here. We're not getting rich here. So you got to do it because you love it, because you want to study the sport. When Sean left to go do the Timberwolves, I said, Sean, don't leave your current Division I school high and dry. Give them my name. I haven't done games in years, but I'll pick them up. I auditioned for women's Division I basketball. That turned into, as you know, Division I women's basketball, Division I men's basketball. It turned into field hockey. It turned into lacrosse. It turned into men's and women's soccer. It turned into tennis. It turned into softball, and it turned into water polo. So you can find your way, because unfortunately, as much as I love this business, I don't think there are enough women and men out there who do it the right way all the time. Everyone thinks, well, I can do it. I can get on the mic and say, okay, John Thomas for 3. But do you know the sport? Do you know how to call it? Do you know the fouls as soon as they're coming out of the officials' mouths? Can you call it before they call it, but not be so cocky that you're calling it wrong before they call it? There's a lot of pieces. It's not just a microphone and I know water polo, or a microphone. And I'm freaking out before my first volleyball game because they want me to call it. And I say, hell yeah, I can do it. I don't know a damn thing about volleyball. Hey, Sean, help me out here. Is it a libero? Is it a libero? Like, what is it? Talk to me, Sean. And the one thing he told me about volleyball, when the official's hand goes up and out, you shut your mouth. There you go. I might be, the first couple games, I'm mid-sentence. I'll be like, side up. I'm shutting my mouth because they put their, that's it. You don't talk. So what else can you tell me about the not cover, Brian, that you want the people to know?
Boy, I don't know. You mentioned something, though. I'd like to touch on something that you said about not knowing the sport and not just, don't just say I know how to speak into a microphone. So a couple of years ago, our athletic director at the high school wanted me to announce a high-profile wrestling match.
Okay.
It was the number 1 and number 2 wrestlers in the state of Minnesota that were going to be wrestling each other. One of those wrestlers now is actually going to be wrestling in Tokyo as an Olympian.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I told him, I said, not only have I never announced a wrestling match, the only time I've ever been to one was when I was dating a cheerleader in high school that was a wrestling cheerleader.
Right.
So I mean, I don't know anything about the sport. Not to mention the fact that, as a person that has a lot of, I believe in karma big time.
Okay.
And so I didn't want to be put into a position where their normal announcer was pushed aside just because they wanted my voice at the event. Turns out their normal announcer was the athletic director's mother. So there wasn't a whole big issue with that. But they literally had somebody that knew wrestling sit right next to me at the table the whole match and fed me my lines.
There you
go. But yeah, I mean, and I'm the same way. Before I did the first volleyball match I did was for a Division II school here in Minnesota that's won 9 national championships. So they're not a bad volleyball program.
Right.
And I did the same thing. I called up Sean and I said, "Hey, Sean, I'm doing volleyball. What do you got for me?" So.
Right. No, I think I haven't been in a bunch of different industries. I've been in the DJ business. I've been in, event announcing, emceeing, hosting, and all of that. I haven't found one person that I've reached out to, or I have never been the person that people reach out to that has turned someone down. If someone wants to know information, that, you know what, it's cliche, but there's enough sports and enough microphones out here for all of us. You might not be the announcer for the Washington football team or whatever, but maybe you start with Pop Warner. You have a sound system, you have a speaker and a mic, go out there and do it. It's more than what the kids have now. Get your feet wet, cut your teeth, do that kind of thing. The opportunities will be there because, unfortunately, as much as I love this business and love the camaraderie we have in Facebook groups and all of that, there are going to be some folks out there who are not professional, and the window will open for you. The window will open. Like I said, I was going to do Division I women's basketball. I ended up with 9 sports at that university here in the DC area. And the opportunity is there often because there's an 18-year-old freshman who wants to do it and he or she thinks they can do it. And they get in front of the mic and they clam up, or they don't have the voice for it. They don't have the energy for it. They don't have the chutzpah for it. And I'm not putting anyone down. I'm just saying it's when those lights come on and ESPN Plus is there or CBS Sports Network is there, it's different than sitting in front of a mirror or in front of your TV calling games. There are, at a small game, there might be 1,800 people there. At a big game, there could be 13,000 people there who are waiting on your every word. And you can't say timeout when there's not a timeout. You can't call traveling when there was a foul because they'll let you know. And mistakes at a revenue generating sport, they're not having it. At water polo, everyone's underwater. They couldn't hear you anyway, whatever. But on a revenue generating sport, you better hit your marks because there's someone in your ear from the control room who's feeding you information as you're talking on the mic. And that information is changing. Forget the script they give you. Oh, no. All of that changes. And you can demand a script all you want, but that script is going to change. You know why? Because the 14 kids who were going to do a cheer, half of them got nervous and they didn't come out. And you better make something up, So you've been there.
Oh, yeah, I've been there. I mean, the very first Division I women's hockey game I did, The camera was on the ice there, and they're putting the camera in front of each player as their name was being announced. And I don't know if you've ever looked at a hockey roster, but it lists the positions across. Usually have left wing, center, right wing, left defense, right defense, goaltender. And they highlighted the bottom row for me. So, all right, introduced the goalie, the left defender, the right defender, went up. They highlighted the top for the left wing, the top for the right wing, but they went down 3 spots for the center. Okay. And I read it straight across.
And we've all had those moments,
Yep. So instantly in my ear, as you stated, I got did something change and we weren't told? And I was like, nope, that was on me.
Yeah, and I get, the guys in the control room at the university I did this past year, it's interesting because they'll say, okay, Kurtis, wait 10 seconds in between each name when you do home starters. So I'm counting 10 seconds, and then at 3 seconds, okay, Kurtis, go. Okay, do you want me to count 10 seconds or do you want me to go on your mind? I love every minute of it. It is fun. And I got to admit, every now and then Paula will send me a text where she takes a screenshot of what she's watching, and there goes the camera, and there goes Kurtis, because during COVID, when there's no one in the arena, you get a lot of camera time.
Yes, you do.
Look, before I let you get out of here, tell the folks how they can connect with you via social media, your teams, and in whatever way you want to link our audience to what you do. Now, I can put the headphones down because you have way too many teams, so this might take a minute, but connect people with your teams. Name teams if you want. Give me Twitter handles, Instagram, websites. How can people find you on these TV shows, on Facebook Live? Talk to the people.
The easiest way to do is just to find me on Twitter at Mr._announcer guy. It's the same address if you're on Instagram. And if you're on Facebook, you just get rid of the underscore because for some reason Facebook doesn't allow that. So it's just Mr. Announcer Guy across all social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. That is where you will most easily find connections to the games I'm doing, to the teams that I'm working for, and the different divisions around the country, along with the Road to Canton series.
Okay, look, Brian, one thing I want to correct is I need you to stop saying the teams I'm working for. You're working with those teams. You are a part of those teams. So they'll find you at Mr._announcer guy and on Facebook at Mr. Announcer Guy. And once they get into that fold, your Vixen stuff, your Gopher stuff, all that stuff will trickle through. We didn't give enough airtime to the Vixen. When are they playing? Tell me about the game they're playing and tell me why this is a high-profile game, because I believe we have 2 undefeated teams here, right?
We do. We have the undefeated Boston Renegades, which will be the home team based on the Massey ratings,
right,
against Minnesota Vixen, who will be the away team.
There you go.
I love your excitement. This game will be played on Saturday, July 24th. If you have DirecTV, it will be on channel 623.
I thought it was 627. I heard you say it before. 623. All right.
Yep. If you do not have DirecTV, you can go to For the Fans HQ on Twitter, and they have a little link that you can click on that will show you all the different ways you can watch the game, whether you have Roku or one of those other streaming services and such.
What about if I got dial-up and antennas?
If you have dial-up and antennas, then you're going to go to oh boy, I don't have my script in front of me right now.
I'm gonna go in my car and drive to Canton.
If you have dial-up and antennas, then you're gonna go to hofvillage.com and click on events and buy tickets to see the game.
And I'm gonna drive my ass to Canton, right?
Yeah.
All right, that works too. They'll take live audience. Look, I know you're extremely proud of the Road to Canton. You should be extremely proud of the work you've done, the spreadsheet and all of that stuff. I really want to thank you for joining the conversation today. This was a bunch of fun, and I want to make sure that I say this. We met as we both had a duty to be groomsmen for our mutual friend, the voice, the main event voice, Sean William Parker. However, the friendship that followed was our choice, and I thank you for being a guy that I guess I can call a You heard that, right?
You do send me meat pics all the time.
I have no idea what that means.
You send me pictures of the meat that you put on the barbecue.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So, I mean, that just means you're a guy I'm showing off in front of. That's all that is. Brian, anything you want to say to the people before we go? You can thank me for the friendship back, Brian. You can reciprocate, Brian.
Curtis, we know how much your friendship has meant to me. The advice that you've given me on my website that is under construction every single day. The fact that you are coming to Minnesota to be a part of my daughter's wedding in 2022.
We didn't talk about that. October 2022, brother.
So obviously, I mean, your friendship does mean a lot to me. I can't wait to come out east to Maryland there and have you show me around town.
I was going to when are you coming? Right, commit to the people right now. When are you coming?
You have to look at my sports schedule.
We got to get you out here, Brian. Look, we want to get you out here. I will tell you, though, this is a different kind of heat out here. It is hot and it is humid. Not just hot. It is humid, Brian. I'm talking about go outside, stand outside, and you're just sweating. No activity. You're just sweating, Brian. All right?
You have Slurpees, though, right?
But I saw that Twitter picture. Yes, we do. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Announcer Guy, Brian Sweeney. Brian, I'll see you backstage in just a minute, fella.
Thank you.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Brian Sweeney, a very good friend, a guy who does a lot of great work out there in Minnesota, behind the mic, in front of a camera. He finds himself in a bunch of different places covering a lot of sports. Follow him at Mr._Announcer Guy on Twitter and Instagram, and on Facebook at Mr. Announcer Guy. That will do it for episode 14 of Conversations with Kurtis. Don't forget, it's Kurtis Talks on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Search Kurtis Impala, and that's Kurtis with a K, on YouTube, and don't forget to subscribe. You'll find our catalog of podcasts on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and just about anywhere you get your podcast content. I want to thank you for listening. Thanks to our sponsors, A Squared Home and Office Solutions and Gene the Barber. And as always, thank you, Khadijah. We'll see you next time.
Crosstalk, Conversations with Kurtis can be heard on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Music, and just about anywhere podcasts can be found.
You know, there are few relationships more solid than the bond between a man and his barber. For years, I've gotten my cut with Gene the Barber. Gene has been cutting my hair for more than 20 years. Call him directly at 240-687-7253 and make an appointment. Gene the Barber, 240-687-7253.
A Squared Home and Office Solutions is the go-to source for home or office network and audiovisual solutions. We can help with smart home integration, wireless networking, media rooms, security systems, and more. We will link technology to your lifestyle seamlessly. Visit homeandofficesolutions.com for more info.